most clean right now. Ty Scott, look how far back he's fallen, Greg. The number 70 is back in 9th.
Betting is now available for Moto America fans. Go to nxtbets.com/playma. For more information, visit motoamerica.com. It's not available everywhere, so go check out to see if betting for Moto America is available in your area. Daytona 200, 5 laps in the books as our lead group is starting to form up. The butterfly's long gone, the tires up to temperature. People have started to sort themselves out of where they fall in this group. It spreads out heading up to the banking, and then it starts to gather itself back together. To give you an idea of top speeds, if you're in a draft, some of these bikes are going in excess of 182 miles an hour. If you're pulling somebody along, you're about 169 miles an hour.
Walking around this paddock for the last 2 days, I was asking a number of people, so, who do you think? And the guy that they kept on talking about is the one that's out front right now, Richie Escalante. He's been able to just put fast lap times in over and over, and you can see Herron squeezing up against that wall with Richard Cooper just to his inside. So far, this is a great showing for the 147, Greg, and he's right where you thought he would be, right up in that lead pack, lead draft. Lots of experience from that guy. And then you can see there, just behind them, the 98, Carl Haneke, Blake Davis, and Hayden Gillum. So all those guys are still there.
Wrenched Motorcycles on the GSXR 750 is Bobby Fong, who now leads it, and he led over the line, so he'll be credited with a lap led. He gets by Richie Escalante. Jay, so far by my tick marks, we're already at 13 lead changes to this point.
Amazing. Yeah, you're going to be a busy guy, I think, there.
I'm going to lose track.
You're going to lose
100%.
track. You are definitely going to lose track, especially in some of our shorter races. I've seen you do that quite a bit, but I think in this one, you're definitely going to lose track. I'm a little bit bummed right now. I'm seeing Josh Hayes get dropped off the back. You can see on our screen there, Brandon Posh is at the tail end of this group, and that is the guy as well that I kind of think he's here. He's having fun. He looks so relaxed in all the interviews, and he's been here before, Greg. He's not going to let these guys all get away, but he's going to let them fight in front of him and eliminate themselves if so. So he's just kind of sitting back there now. One of the riders goes wide. I believe that's Marvin Fritz, who probably went a little bit wide. Pretty easily to recognize Fritz and Carl Haneke in their World Endurance leathers, their Yart leathers. So he went a little bit wide. He should be okay. He should be able to get back into the back of Brandon Bosch and go with it. So this time, last lap, Escalante was leading by a good margin. You can see that it's gone now. Bobby Fong and Herron's there. Hannah?
And we talked to Herron on the grid about, does he feel that need, the pressure to win back-to-backs after last year? And he said, not really, I'm not feeling the pressure for that. Something that I am feeling a little bit more pressure about, however, is racing with people that I have no experience racing around, because it can be unpredictable. He doesn't necessarily know what riders like Fritz or Haneke, or even someone like Blake Davis, who is making his way up through the Moto American classes. He can't expect what they're going to do, but the one thing Josh Herron does know is Daytona, and he's going to control what he can control for the duration.
Now, Richard Cooper now has moved his way to second place, and there's a rider that Herron's not going to be familiar with on the racetrack as Cooper tries to make a bid around the outside. That is a long way around, but Herron controls that inside line, pushes Richard Cooper wide, and he's going to lose a handful of spots as they head off to the International Horseshoe. Well played by the number 2.
Yeah, and I think for Herron, this is where he wants to be. He's going to continue to find himself back up that front. I think you got about 3 or 4 guys. I talked to Josh before the start of this race, like I said, and one of the things he brought up was he's going to kind of make a decision on when to pit and who to pit with. It's very important here when you pit at Daytona that you have a dance partner to go back out with, because you need that draft and redraft. And if it's somebody that you trust or somebody that you're comfortable riding around, it makes that much easier. So these guys are going to be getting pit boards, and we'll talk maybe about that next lap by Grade. You can tell us where those pit boards are being shown. Here's Marvin Fritz, and there's Josh Hayes. You can see Josh is just off the back. He's not going to be too worried at this moment because he realizes it is a long 57 laps. Josh Hayes here trying to win again after, what was it? I can't remember what year it was that he actually won the 200. Then he had a problem after the race. 2007. He's been trying to win it since, and he's come oh so close so many times. So he's not going to be too anxious here just yet.
That was during the days when we ran Formula Extreme middleweights in the middle, or during the Daytona 200. Well, the field has sorted itself out right now, and if you look at Josh Herron all the way down to Marvin Fritz, and even Josh Hayes, who's still in the picture, we have 12 riders in this lead draft. as they fan out on the straightaway. As they come to that start-finish line, it's going to be Richard Cooper who leads officially the 147.
And we lost Blake Davis. I'm looking for him here, Greg. He's been in this lead group the whole time. And
we lost him.
We've lost him, haven't we? I'm wondering if he's ran straight down there in the chicane or what that might have been. From our vantage point here, just see Coop get into that International Horseshoe a little bit too deep. So Richard Cooper keeps trying to lead this race, and he did a good job of leading it through turn one, but he wasn't able to kind of keep the bike on the rails. Runs a little wide in the International Horseshoe. That puts him back. And look and see, this is what happens, Greg. This field of 14, 15 that we had, now what are we down to? Probably 8, 9 at the front. So you can see Mesa just off the back. That's 9 guys. And then Fritz and Josh Hayes behind them.
On the banking, lap number 8 of 57, the Daytona 200. And just like we expect for this first stint before our first pit stop, another lead change takes place. You can see Richard Cooper on that bright Triumph right there in second place. And it is Richie Escalante, the 54.
Hayden Gillum just went straight in the chicane too. This is exactly what happened. Now he's as far as the lead draft, Gillum will never see these guys again. It's going to have to be a great pit stop. It's going to have to be some race strategies and things like that. But that's what happens. It's so easy to follow 5, 6 bikes in there. It's, again, you feel like you're getting pushed in there. And once you realize that your bike's not slowing down, you have no choice but to just go straight. Hayden Gillum now is going to find himself back there trying to fight his way back through with Danny Essick and so on. We are down to 8 guys now that are really in this lead draft. Gillum now is back with Josh Hayes. That could work for him because if him and Josh get together, they can start to pull each other along.
Yeah, you can see that. Looks like Marvin Fritz kind of in no man's land with Hayden Gillum and Josh Hayes back there. So if those two can work together and figure out a way to close up this gap. But what they need, Jason, is this lead group to start infighting in the infield. Because drafting and passing on the banking doesn't really
I really don't think they will, though. You have too much knowledge here. These guys know that, and I'm really impressed with the rider fourth on our screen there, Carl Haneke. He is just literally watching what guys are doing, learning with every lap, feeling what these guys are all about, and he realizes it, both him and Richard Cooper. This is incredible for both of these guys that they've stayed there. There's Brandon Posh, Ty Scott, Mesa. These guys have all been around here. I know Ty Scott's young, but he's seen what's going on as far as his teammates and things in the past. Now, Escalante looks like he's trying to make a break. He's been fast in that infield all weekend long, and he's gotten through it on his own this lap. And I tell you, Greg, it gives you such a big boost of confidence when you don't have anybody draft by you, because you think, man, have I finally broke these guys a little bit? And you're really racing back to your pit board to see. We see our very first back markers coming up. Last year, if you remember, it was some 14 or 15 laps until we saw any of them. Now we're on lap 9 of 57 as we get a good look at one of those Yamahas, Marvin Fritz, coming out of the chicane. But Escalante has broke away. Now Bobby Fong and Heron are going to take note of that. They're going to do their best to get past Richard Cooper and then try to pull everybody back along and get back up behind that number 54.
So Escalante with the largest lead we have seen so far in the 2024 edition of the Daytona 200. About half a second. And that's on the back of sector number 1 fastest split, 56.616 seconds. But the lap traffic coming in. And the blue flags will fly, Jay, but interestingly enough, it just kind of depends on where you catch them.
That's right.
And what lines these back markers will take.
So you watch here, Escalante is going to be able to get past this guy before the kink, and I think that everybody else might have a problem doing that before the kink. See that? So Bobby Fong just got balked going in there, and he's going to get ran wide. That's going to create a bigger gap for Escalante, because all these riders have now made their way through, but these are the gaps that get created, and you'll see that Escalante will end up getting a bigger gap, and now he's caught up to the 55. He's going to go past him on the inside, and Heron's going to be the next guy to maybe get held up just a little bit. But look, the number 2, if there's a guy that is going to put a qualifying lap in on lap 10 of a race, it's that number 2 of Josh Heron. He sees what's going on up ahead of him, and he doesn't want to let Escalante get away. Bobby Fong the same, and Cooper now finds himself in fourth, but no reason to real stress yet. There's a 7-second gap between Josh Hayes in 11 and TJ Jacobson.
Left part of your screen, Jason, take a look at Tyler Scott. And it looks like there was like maybe the pad on the back of the seat flew off.
Yep.
Looks like it bounced off of something on Mesa's side.
Yep. He's going to have seen that and know that it was nothing off of his. So that's going to be okay. And you can see Herron doing everything he can now to try to catch back up. Escalante's pushed the pace of this race. His last lap through was a 1:49.497. It was half a second quicker than the guy behind him at that point, which was Bobby Fong. As you can see, this tail ender staying at the top of the banking is going to allow everybody here to go through. And this is going to be something common that we're going to see throughout the course of the day of guys just trying to get through the lap traffic as clean as they can. And you always want to be the first one to them, Greg. Like, Escalante can really determine what he wants to do. And you can see Herron that last time through was a little bit quicker. Hannah.
We saw Richie Escalante make the step up to Superbike and did really well in his rookie season, but he said he has never felt more at home being back on the 750. He still very much feels like a super sport racer, and that was something he kind of struggled with last year on the bigger bike. He said he's still riding it like a super sport machine, so really happy to be on that bike. He said he's not thinking about the result much. He just wants to finish this year, but I'm sure he surprised himself being out front so early on.
Oh, Herron runs wide. Herron did all the work to get back up to the back of Escalante, then ran wide going into sixth. But Escalante got held up a little bit in the kink, and that allowed everybody to pull back in. But Herron's going to have to do all that hard work again, Greg. And now you have to ask yourself, how much is he going to be punishing this tire? We're about 7 laps away, I believe, until that pit window starts to open up. And Herron's going to do the same job he just did by trying to pull this field back up to the back of Escalante. He just got into turn 6 there, a little bit too deep, got out to the dirty part of the track. But look at how hard these guys are pushing to get back up. And really, Greg, now you've got the front 6 again. You know, we're down to 6 guys. We started off with about 14. Now we're down to 6 up in that lead group.
And it just adds to the pressure of only having 6 in the lead group. When they do come in for those pit stops, crews have got to be spot on in order to keep their rider in the fight. And for second place, that's Bobby Fong going around Herron. And Herron is going to draft right past. And again, these are next generation motorcycles. So if you're joining us for the first time in many years and you're wondering what the GSXR 750 doing against a Ducati Panigale V2 and a Yamaha R6, this is next generation rules, and there is a lot of balancing in play, especially with the next generation motorcycles that have ECUs that are controllable, like the GSXR 750, like the Panigale V2, and like the Triumph Street Triple as well.
I can see Bobby Fong making gestures to his crew. Those pit boards are on that short run there out of the International Horseshoe, and we on riders left. I see a black flag out also for somebody, but that's what you see when you see riders. You might start seeing riders acknowledging their crew. Escalante now, Greg, has got 2.5 laps without being drafted, and he's probably wondering how big his gap is. And you can see now he's going to be in a position where he will probably get drafted back either down into the chicane or get drafted to the start-finish line by 2 other very seasoned riders, Bobby Fong and Josh Herron. I saw Richard Cooper in a double draft coming to the line that last time by. He let off, almost like he knew that these guys were going to be the guys that could help pull him back up to the front. So pretty good stuff there. As you saw Herron get real close to the wall, but look, Greg, now they have ran that 54 back down. When that happens, you can almost take a little bit of a breath now. Okay, he tried to get away. He didn't get away for Escalante. He made a big push. Wasn't able to continue to make that break, and now it's going to be first pit stops here in about 5 or 6 laps.
Great sounds of the motors screaming at full song on the banking here at Daytona. Lap traffic off to the right. It's the 54 you're looking at, the Vision Mill M4 Star Suzuki, but it's the wrench motorcycle of Bobby Fong that goes to the lead. And just like that, it looks like the number 2 Josh Herron took it for a moment on that Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati. But it's going to be Bobby Fong who takes the spot, all the while Richard Cooper able to close up and get on the back wheel of Escalante. Jay, wouldn't surprise me if for Escalante that was something he had planned to see how hard he needed to push and how much of a gap. And then he said, okay, good, I got it. If I push really hard late in the session, then maybe I can get a second or 2.
There's no question, and now he knows. But here's the thing. So far, all the back markers that we've come across, you see Herron with his leg out just a little bit. That's so that guys know behind, hey, we're catching some back markers here. If I check up, that's why I'm checking up. It's one thing, Greg, to pass one at a time. These guys are going to start coming up on back markers in big packs of riders, and that's where the problems will really have to sort. Just like this right here. Bobby Fong gets through, Josh Herron doesn't, and he's going to have to take the long way around. So you put yourself at more risk. You get out to the dirty part of the track. The bike spins a little bit more. Now Bobby Fong, he's going to be drafting through these guys, and then you're going to see some speed differentials between the top bikes and some of the tail enders. And that's what you're going to, and this is how this race goes and playing itself out. Once you start getting into the tail enders, Greg, it becomes a thing that you have to deal with every single lap. You can see the blue flags being waved. But if you're in a pack of 4 or 5 guys racing against whoever you're racing against, then you're going to get lapped by all the leaders. It can get really messy. So we'll see if this group stays together. This 6th group, this riders that are 6 wide, or 6 in a line, and we'll see how that changes things. Carl Haneke with a 48.6 early in the race. Now these guys are kind of rolling around low 49s the last couple of laps.
With this lap traffic, you got to play it right. Now, it can hurt you and help you.
Right.
If you get held up in the infield, but you do get a couple lappers that are there that you can draft off of, even if there is a bit of a gap, it can definitely help you. So Herron trying to go around kind of the wide line, but Richie Escalante has to go inside out, and he'll lose a bike length or 2.
Yep.
But this is really starting to gap now. With Richard
now you got
Cooper
3 guys.
Ty Scott has passed Richard Cooper at the line for 4th place, but here's that battle. So there's Cooper right there, the bike, extreme left part of your screen. And in that black and red Vision Wheel M4 Star Suzuki, the number 70 is Ty Scott. And then Haneke on the 98 is on that Yard motorcycle.
Yep. And these 3 guys here, if they can get clean runs and the other guys get a little bit of traffic, that's what they need. But this is how this gets fractured. You got 3 in the front now, and you got another chasing 3 behind. And right now we've got some clear track. So the 3 most experienced guys are really at the front of this race at the moment.
Wow, starting to spin the rear tire is Bobby Fong. He was almost up and out of the saddle. That's going to blow his drive. And Herron is going to go for the lead. The Daytona 200 is fast and furious like we like it here in Daytona International Speedway. Into the chicane we go with 44 laps to go. And Bobby Fong maintains that lead, and he wants to be the first through the lap traffic.
Yeah, it's just so key. And the neat thing is, at this point, these guys, all 3 of these guys know each other so well. Think about how many laps Josh Herron and Richie Escalante did around this track last year together. I mean, they were just back and forth with each other nearly the whole, that whole stint, that last stint. And you can see Escalante is going to draft back past that Ducati, or attempt to, as Herron goes back through. And those guys are going to lead their way down into turn number 1. Another clean lap. But minute 50.4 that last time through.
Just under 43 laps to go in the Daytona 200. We have 15 in the book, so we expect the pit stop window to open up here in the next couple of laps. The first critical run into pit lane. And it looks like back in 20th place, we have Kayla Yakov. Fan favorite Yakov on that Ray Hall Ducati Moto with Expel Ducati Panigale V2, who went into the pits. But
yeah, she's been running like 17th, Greg, so she's going to be the first one that we've seen in the pits on lap 14. Seems a little early. So, but don't forget that the team has to service 3 riders. So they've got PJ Jacobson. It looks like a normal pit stop for Kayla, her first Daytona 200. Talked to her today, and she said, hey, we're just getting things better and better. It's almost like a test for this team right now. They had a really tough Thursday, Greg, and they've been going back and forth and getting these bikes better. Even in warm-up this morning, both her and PJ and, of course, Corey Alexander making some big changes. Looked like a good pit stop for Kayla.
Anna?
Yeah, guys, there was kind of a question mark on to go that had been practicing avidly, and it looks like it went pretty well from where it was standing. The thing that really impressed me about Kayla is you've got so many big names in racing that have come here to run the high banks of Daytona, and they all said first impressions, they were scared to death, more scared they've ever been at any racetrack. And I asked Kayla, how was it your first time out? She said, I was wide open on the banking on the first lap.
Gotta like that.
Expect anything more from her, would you? So
Herron to the lead. The number 2 for the moment into turn 1. Bobby Fong has position on the inside, but Herron sweeps around That was kind of a weird line. Checks up, but nose to tail. We have Josh Herron, number 2. Number 50 is Bobby Fong. Number 54 is Richie Escalante. Starting to drift back by a couple of seconds is Tyler Scott, Richard Cooper, Carl Hanukkah, and then another 4 seconds back from them is Mesa Potts.
Look at Bobby Fong. See him shaking his head to his team. Don't be surprised if he ducks into the pit lane on this time. That window's starting to open. This will be lap 17 when they come through. So he's either going to pit now or he's seen a P2 on his board. As I'm looking out my window, I can see PJ Jacobson coming into the pits as well. So those Ducatis for the Rahal team are actually just pitting a little bit earlier than I had expected. So I think part of that, Greg, probably is caused by some of the bad luck that they had on Thursday. They probably didn't get too many long runs. And the last thing you want to do is leave your rider out there stranded with no fuel. So they'll be able to see how much fuel is actually going in that tank. And then they'll be able to adjust their mileage, adjust when they want to get back out or when they want to maybe do that second pit stop. It might be a lap longer the next time through. So with Kayla in and PJ in, we're going to expect probably to see Corey Alexander come in shortly.
That's the Rahal Ducati motor with Expel. Rider PJ Jacobson running number 15 this year, not the 99. So get used to that all season long in Super Sport. And back to the high banks we go.
And Herron looks like he's making a gesture. I saw his hand come off the bar. Don't know if that means he's coming in on this lap. Bobby goes low. Herron's low. It looked like, yep, Herron's got that right leg out as well. So I saw him gesture. This is probably exactly what he wanted. Escalante comes into the pits with him. And these two guys, you know, the thing is, Greg, is that they can run around with each other. They see each other. Herron gives him the thumbs up. I mean, it was a year ago that I'm sure that thumbs up wasn't going to be too accepted on a Sunday at the end of that Saturday night. But now they're going to go back out. They can go out and run together. Now, the pressure is on the crews. The crews got to do their job. They got to get their men in, out. They got to stay relaxed and calm.
Here we go. Up onto the jack stand it goes, both front and rear. Escalante has to get off the bike. The fuel goes in. Chloe hands Richie a little bit of a drink. He gets some in his system, and the tire's going on. It looks like a good, clean front wheel on the left-hand part of your screen for Josh Herron. He's already ready rolling, and he's getting ready to get out on the racetrack, and he's close to the pit out. Hannah?
And I don't know if you noticed this, but his teammate in the Superbike class this year was actually the one refueling the bike, and watch that really inspired confidence to have Loris there supporting him. He trusts him, and he knew that with those 4 seconds, he could probably offer some funny words of encouragement that Josh would appreciate from probably nobody else.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to see him there. But, man, that Ducati team did exactly what they needed to do. Now, watch this guy. He's going to come out of the pits, Greg, with his hair on fire. These laps here are just as important as any other lap, as Corey Alexander is now in the pits. And you saw that Warhorse team was able to get their guy out of the pits a lot earlier than Escalante. Escalante's got some work to do. Looks like the pit stop here for Corey Alexander. Good, clean stop for them. Corey must have made a mistake early because he was running about 15th, 16th spot, and then he went off our screen. So I'm assuming, Greg, that he probably ran wide or long into the chicane somewhere. Bobby Fong now out front. He's had a 3-second lead on Ty Scott. He's coming to the bottom. You're going to see the number 50 rider. Is he going to go around one more lap? He's going to go around one more lap. That's the 50. Now, this plays a big role as far as fuel strategies go, Greg. And right now, he's pushing his own win. Look at the difference in lap time when you push your own win. 51.5, and he was doing mid-50s just a lap before.
Yeah, plus his speed was 161, where when he was in a draft, it was well into the 170s. And we know that there is a penalty for PJ Jacobson, a speeding pit lane penalty for the number 15 bike. More pit stops on the right part of your screen.
Yeah, Carl Hanukkah has come in now along with Ty Scott. You can see, let's see if these M4 guys can get this done a little bit better. You see the boss. Is that Chris Horch there on the fuel?
Yeah.
It looks like it. Chris doing the fueling. Hanukkah gets out. You'd expect nothing more from that yard team. Great stop for them. And look, they're going to go back out together. So they're going to be able to work together now and try to pull each other back forward. And I bet you, Greg, they're going to go out somewhere around where Escalante is. So we'll keep an eye out and see the difference between Escalante and these two guys here. But expect this guy coming in next lap.
And as a reminder, that's a 16-kilometer or 37-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limiter. There is a line that says you have to be at that speed here, and then the exit line. And you see a lot of riders crossing that on the way out. And as soon as they cross that line, it is all throttle until you have that tight left turn that takes you on the pit out lane. So Bobby Fong, Wrench Motorcycle, GSXR, Suzuki. That's the 750, one of the next generation bikes. And it's so good to see Bobby Fong at the top of the board. But a 151.528 pushing his own air. And this is the question, who went out with who? And how much are they going to be able to draft each other? Because it looked to us like when Josh Herron went out, he was all by himself. There's the leg out for Bobby Fong. He's signaling to the riders behind him that he's coming into the pits. He's got to get the thing slowed down by the time pit entrance happens right there. And that's your 37-mile-an-hour limit.
This feels like an eternity. You just feel like you're just absolutely parked, sitting there when you come down pit lane, especially on that pit lane speed limiter. Let's see how this wrench team gets Bobby Fong in and out. Very calm, very relaxed as they come in.
They're going rear tire only,
It looks like it. I can see somebody looking at that front tire. That's Robbie Peterson on the right, I believe.
Oh, they're struggling with the rear, struggling to get it off. He finally got it off.
That's Nick Seiling on the rear wheel there, trying to get that rear wheel back in. I thought it was Robbie, but it's not Robbie.
Nope, so basically for Bobby, you're not allowed to touch that bike until the fuel is off the bike. So they get him going. A little bit of struggle, but okay. Here's Josh Hayes, the number 4. So for Hayes on that CSU 1-Cure J-Force Racing Yamaha R6, they're trying to get the veteran back on and out onto the racetrack. And now these are the times, Jay. We need all these pit stops to sort themselves out before we see who's really doing what.
I'm going to tell you right now, there's Richard Cooper, another team that's just going to try to get their rider in and out as quickly as we can. Oh, okay, so we are understanding now that they actually had a problem with this bike. They had to push it back, so it's going to be a bit of a long stop for Cooper. Hey, man, that Warhorse team, they did their job. I believe that it's going to be Josh Herron that's going to be leading this race, and not just by a small margin. I think he's going to be leading by a pretty good margin once this sorts itself out. And the reason I say that is that when I saw Bobby Fong leaving pit lane, I saw Josh Herron go through the tri-oval at full stop. So also finding out what happened to Blake Davis a little bit earlier, Greg, he actually tipped over in turn 6. So that was the reason for that.
Let's check in with Hannah about how pit stops went.
You know, watching a lot of them up and down the pit lane, I think what separates a really good pit stop from a great pit stop isn't necessarily the physical speed of the pit crew's movement, but more about the precision with which they execute those quick changes. So if you're smooth and deliberate, it will definitely have a big impact. Someone like Richie Escalante, you know, he ended up running over a front stand that wasn't even from someone from his crew, so he left feeling really frustrated. But when Tyler Scott came in for his change, very concise, very deliberate movements, and he certainly had a bit of a faster pit stop than Richie even.
It's so crazy, Hannah, that you can have the pace to win. But when you come down pit lane, it is just as important, if not more important, than the actual spinning fast laps. It looks like Brandon Potts has ran out of gas. He's been going around, Greg, and going around, and he's leading this race. But now you can see that Suzuki's, it looks like it's starting to sputter. So they tried to push the limit. What are we on, lap 19? He's not going to make it back around. If that thing's sputtering right now in the infield, he might be able to make it, but it doesn't look good right now for the 96. As you can see that bike, he's going to have to go to the apron, and he's going to have to short shift this bike and try to make it all the way around. So for the 96, the 2-time Daytona 200 winner, this is going to be a problem now. As you can see him trying to stay low on that banking, and he's running out of gas. And we saw this, 2 years ago with Josh Herron?
Yeah, we did.
So, you know, when you push that first fuel window, you got to remember, you have a sighting lap, you got a warm-up lap. So this is actually like lap 21 on that bike. And when you start trying to open that to where you think you have the fuel mileage, unless you have been super consistent and ran race distances in your practices, it's really, really hard to gauge the fuel and how much fuel you're using. He's doing a great job of getting this bike around right now, and I guarantee you, his heart is in his stomach at the moment.
Yeah, he's just hoping that bike doesn't stop. You can see him kind of working it left and right, trying to see if any of the fuel in the tank is going to get to the fuel pump. Brandon Fox, this is a bit of a heartbreaker. We're still waiting for this entire field to sort themselves out, but here he comes. Is he going to have enough to get him there, Jay?
Yeah, he's there now. He has done a really good job, and for anybody that's ever had this problem, you have to understand, like, this guy knew what he was doing. He was running out of gas out of the first horseshoe, which is amazing to think that he's actually, you can see him shaking it there. It's amazing to think that he made it that far around. I honestly didn't think he would, so good on him for that. But this is going to kill a lot of chances for him, as I see Herron flash across the start-finish line right now, and Brandon just coming to a stop.
Well, that's all he could do. with 37 laps to go in the Daytona 200. He's won it twice in the last 3 years. And Hannah, and a big fuel dump. So unfortunately, the brake on the fuel can didn't quite close itself.
And now you leave pit lane, you think, how much of that's on my rear tire? How much is it all over me?
On the motor.
Is the cap itself closed? Am I going to get fuel all over me now? So he's going to have to be really careful on his that lap. So sadly, this is the kind of stuff that we see sometimes at Daytona, where it's not so much the riding side of it that has cost us. It's going to be something simple by trying to push it one too many laps. That's all it is.
Bad luck.
You're exactly right. Yep.
And that's it. I mean, it takes speed. It takes a really good crew to have fast pit stops, but it also takes some luck here in the Daytona 200. So Brandon Potts, the number 96, back out on the racetrack. He's on that Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki RSP sponsored bike.
I want you to pay attention to. If you see this thing, it's Keith Perry, who's done this 100 times, as he gets it out.
That's just bad luck.
Exactly. It's stuck open, didn't it, Greg? And
yeah.
So the tank was full, and you can see him get just a little bit sideways on his way out on that fuel.
That system is designed like the valve, when he pushes it down, the valve opens and dumps it. It just didn't quite get it closed when he disconnected it.
But what I want to pay attention to now, when we circle back through this next lap by, it's going to be Josh Herron leading. On his first flying lap, here comes the number 2 to the tri-oval now. He went 49.3, Greg, on his first flying lap on that new tire, and he's going to have almost a 10-second lead on the next guy that's going to come through, and we'll wait for that to happen as he goes through at a 49.9. So Herron probably had a little bit of traffic on that lap. The next guy through is going to be Richie Escalante, 10.7-second lead. That's how quick it was in the pits for that Warhorse team. What it does now for this guy takes a lot of pressure off. Once he sees on his pit board to the left here in a minute, he's going to look over, see him looking at that pit board and give it a nod. He just got to see he's got a 10-second lead. Now he can take his time through some of these back markers. If he gets himself into a position, Greg, where he has to think, should I or shouldn't I? He doesn't have to anymore. He can actually take his time a little bit and get this bike to that second pit stop.
Now the thing I will say is that second place is Richie Escalante and third place is Ty Scott. Both Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki riders. They're only separated by 0.7 of a second. If Escalante and Scott can get together, they can use each other in the draft and pass to help mitigate some of that lead for Josh Herron. But Escalante is going to have to look behind him and see his teammate Scott, or Scott's going to have to put in some miraculous flyer because you can see the gap is starting to increase.
And what does it do to a tire? You know, that's the biggest thing, right, Greg? Is it's Escalante now knows he's got to try to make up for the mistake in the pits. So he's going to just be grinding that Dunlop rear tire for this whole session, and it puts a lot of pressure on him now. And the funny thing about Daytona, Greg, is you can come off that turn 2 banking over there, and he'll be able to see Herron up ahead in the chicane. And all he's trying to do then, as you can see, he's got the fastest first split of the race, has this man Escalante. I know that he can run high 48s or low 49s, but it's going to be tough. Herron also was only a 10th off. Herron does his best first split, right?
And that's the hardest part. We're at Escalante with a brand new tire, yes, but also a full fuel load. He only goes a 1/10 of a second quicker in sector number 1. He does get another 1/10 back in sector number 2. So about 0.3 of a second is all Escalante can do to chip into Herron's lead, and that takes it to 10.4 seconds.
And all the clear track. Both riders now have a bunch of clear track, and Herron will be able to look over to the right and see, he knows there's nobody back there. That's a great feeling for him to have this early in the race. I know we're only on lap 23, but that's a great feeling for Herron to have at the moment. And his crew should be high-fiving themselves down there for the job they did.
What a flurry of pit stops we had, and now the race is sorting itself out in our second sector of this race. So much more to come. Herron up onto the banking with 34.5 laps to go and a pit stop under our belt. And Josh Herron, who won a national championship 2 years ago with this Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati Panigale V2, gets on this thing for the Daytona 200, wraps up a win, and now is in control of this race for the moment. And Jay, I say for the moment because not only do we have 35 laps left, but we have at least one more pit stop to go.
Exactly right. But when you start to look at what's going on here, and we start cycling through these pit stops, Greg, let's look and see who the big winners and the losers were. Obviously, Herrin, big winner. Escalante and Ty Scott running second and third right now. Hayden Gillum and Bobby Fong. Bobby Fong, big loser there in that pit stop as well, as it took him some time. Hamika there at 6th, Hayes 7th, Mesa, Fritz, Brandon Posh, unfortunately, all the way back down to 10th. And another couple guys, Richard Cooper now back to 16th.
Into turn number 1 we go with our second place rider, Richie Escalante, on that Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki, and his teammate, number 70, Ty Scott, your pole sitter, behind him. Scott, of course, working a right shoulder that was knocked out of its socket a couple days ago. And he kept telling me, Jay, yeah, I'm fine, no problem. Yeah. Now, look, we all know Daytona is not the most physical racetrack in the world. But your shoulder, Hannah, it's got to be painful at some point.
It's definitely painful when it was dislocated, but they got it back in right away, and that part hurt too. It's sore on the bike, especially when he tucks in on that bank and rotating his elbows downward. Really kind of pulls on the shoulder. He said this morning, though, was feeling much, much better than it did all day yesterday.
Well, that's good. And normally it's that second day, Jason, you talk about that's the most painful.
And I saw him today, and his handshake, Greg, was strong still. You said it yesterday, and I know he's good. But to your point earlier, it would be so much nicer if he could close that 1.8 second gap up to Escalante and they could work together a little bit. I mean, that is going to make a difference on the bankings and the speed. Look at Escalante. He just continues to keep setting 56.3 again. He's got down into the 48. He went 48.9 last lap. So he was 6 cents quicker than Herrin than that on that last time through. The big thing is it's the traffic, isn't it? Like where you catch him, how you catch him. But right now he's putting his head down. It's at 9.917, and I believe it started off at about 10.5 seconds. So Herrin clicks off another lap here of 50.5. So again, if all of a sudden Escalante continues to run some high 48s as he goes across now, 48.8, his personal best lap. His teammate is back there about a second off of 49.7 for Ty Scott. And then they have a bit of a gap over Hayden Gillum and Bobby Fong, who are back there battling for 4th and 5th. But they're doing 50.10, 50.6. So the guy right now that's on the move, 8.2 seconds behind, Richie Escalante, is now of Josh Herrin.
So what does that take? 3 seconds? Over 3 seconds. Herrin's given back to Escalante, but Escalante, 56.3, 8.4 on that first split. He's really working those Dunlop tires. But for Herrin, it's no big dramas.
Right.
Although it is a minute and 50 seconds before he sees his pit board.
Yeah.
But, you know, with 8 seconds, you look back there and all that lap traffic. The good thing is that Escalante has a very distinguishable number this year. So Herrin's going to be able to see it. But I don't think he's going to worry about it until it's probably, 5 seconds, 4 seconds?
I don't think he's going to worry about it at all. This guy, he's won the Daytona 200. He knows what it's all about. He's seasoned. He's got this place sorted. And right now, I bet you right now, he is not thinking that this is where he would be 25 laps into this race, in the sense that he'd have this big lead. I think that we all thought that there would be at least maybe 4 or 5 guys right now up in this lead group. And right now, Herrin, he's not going to even worry about this stuff right now. And the confidence he's got in his crew and his team, when he does come into the pits, he's just got to not make any big mistakes.
Jason, you're absolutely right. When I talked to Herrin about his race strategy, he said the first part of the race was just kind of feel it out, see what happens. I don't think he was expecting to have a lead like this or such a big gap. He said this second stint is the most crucial part of the race for him, because he needs to set himself up for that third stint. So as he's flicking off these laps, he's just going to try and keep getting farther and farther and farther away, so that he does have room for error, if there is any, as he's trying to get around this back marker, it looks like here, in that second pit stop, so that he can be in the best position possible to try and win this race.
Yeah, it's a great report, Hannah. The thing is Greg, it goes back again. 49.9 for Herrin, 50.5 for Richie. So we know Richie probably got some traffic in a bad way. And for Herrin, he's not going to worry about any of that. As it looks like Eli Block has gone down, Greg. It looks like, trying to figure out where this could be. Might be the chicane area, but he is up and trying to get that bike started. And Richard Cooper has crashed, Greg. Oh. What a shame. And this, Greg, when you have a bad pit stop and you start pushing, trying to make up that time, this guy knew he had the capabilities of running in the top 3, and he did. He led the Daytona 200, and I feel so bad for Richard Cooper right now. This team's done a really great job getting their riders up to speed. Looking a little further back at his teammate, Peter Hickman's back there in 15th right now, so he's doing a nice job as Herron just continues to roll on, Greg. 8.8 seconds was his lead the last lap through.
Coming up on the 71 is Josh Herron. He'll take his time to get through the chicane. As I say that, Josh was like, okay, I got to kind of figure this out. And this is one of the hardest parts about the mid part of this race, is you have riders that have different skill sets. They have different crew levels, Jay. So like how some of these riders that are in the back, they